Welcome to another edition of the Jerry Ratcliffe Show, and we appreciate everyone, all the thousands of you Wahoos and other folks tuning in as you do a couple of times a week, and most appreciate your support. You can find our podcast on practically every podcast venue on the planet, and if you can't, let us know. We'll find out where that is and I'll make it available to you. But thank you for tuning in. Also, thank you for visiting our website. We're having record numbers, and we appreciate your support. And our content is brought to you free, thanks to our great sponsors. This podcast in particular, we want to thank the sponsors for supporting the podcast, and that's the Aberdeen Barn, the Good Feet Store, and Roback, Charlottesville. There's the little logo. Roback is one of the fastest growing sportswear companies in America. We're based right here in Charlottesville by some Darden School graduates, and we urge you to support them and our other great sponsors. And you'll be able to hear their commercials throughout our show today. So without further ado, I want to introduce our special guest today, and I've been looking really forward to this interview for weeks now. We've had it lined up, and someone that I have incredible respect for, and the more I research and learn about him, my respect level just skyrockets. Such a great guy, and not just a great alum, but just a great guy in the communities that he serves. And we want to welcome him aboard. We're talking about Don Flow, who is chairman of and chief executive officer of Flow Automotive. Huge car dealers in Virginia and North Carolina. I think I read they have 50 or more dealerships in those two states. And I mean, that's just incredible to me. I mean, who does that? It's unbelievable. Don, thank you so much for joining us today. Hope everything is going great for you.
Jerry, it's great to be here. It's a real pleasure to join you. Thanks for inviting me.
And for those of you not familiar with Don, especially outside of his incredibly successful car dealerships, Don is a UVA grad. Came here as a football player in the mid 70s.
Right.
74, 75, 76. In those days, freshmen weren't eligible. And so played football at Virginia, graduated here, and went on to incredible success as a businessman, which we'll get into this a little bit later, but it will show everyone out there who's a football player or a potential football player how important an education is, because not everybody goes to the NFL and becomes a star like Thomas Jones we had on a couple of weeks ago, and Thomas was talking about how valuable that education is, because even if you do make it to the NFL, that career doesn't last too long usually. So it's very important. And of course, Don also has an MBA from Wake Forest Business School and is heavily involved in both schools. Don, I guess as we get started, I think I read somewhere that when you were in high school down in North Carolina, you were the top rated running back in the state. Is that true? And if it is,
I think that's overstated, but that's a kind statement for somebody to have a memory. I appreciate memories like that. I've played in the Shrine Bowl for North Carolina, representing North Carolina versus South Carolina. We had a terrific team, and there were a lot of great players on that Shrine Bowl game as well. Actually, Marvin Powell ended up being in the College Hall of Fame, was on our team. Mickey Marvin was at Tennessee, Rod Broadway, Carolina, Al Hunter, Notre Dame. We had a lot of great players on that team. So I was actually headed to a North Carolina school and really looked at all of them. And then beyond that, some schools outside the state. And what turned out to be quite interesting is Gene Corrigan's brother, Jim Corrigan, was a neighbor of mine. So Jim came down one day and said, "Have you ever thought about going to UVA?" And I said, "Well, actually, nobody in North Carolina goes to UVA." I don't think, and he said, well, how about if I send the films up? So they sent my films up, and I immediately got a call from the coaches and said, we'd love you to come visit. So I came up and visited, and they did a perfect job for me anyway. They had us have lunch in the rotunda.
Wow.
And so we had lunch in the rotunda, and on one side was a faculty member named Ernie Earn, who became a lifetime friend. And still, I saw Ernie this spring, had dinner with him. And on the other side, they had a very attractive woman, co-ed, who was really smart and really attractive. And she was very involved in the school and all kinds of things. And she was telling me all the things you get involved in. And Ernie Earn was talking to me about everything I could study there. So I called my mom and dad and I said, hey, I think I'm gonna go to UVA. They said, UVA? I thought you were gonna go to Duke or here or there, another place. I said, I'm gonna go to UVA. They said, why? I said, well, they don't think I'm stupid. I actually got to talk to a faculty member who gave me all the things I could study here. And they have good looking girls here who are super smart. And that's where I want to go. So I ended up meeting my wife there, who was an Equal Scholar at UVA, and we got married, and we've been married for 45 years now. So that turned out okay.
Yeah,
so that's
great.
how I got to UVA. It shows you when you're 17, the things that shape your mind, right? Don't
Absolutely.
think I'm stupid. They've got good looking, smart girls. That's a good reason to go there, right?
Those are good selling points.
Yep.
No question.
At the rotunda. I remember walking down the lawn and being so mesmerized by that, and I was really grateful, really privileged that my 4th year I got to live on the lawn. So that kind of was a dream come true to imagine being able to have that experience.
And your great wife, Robin, that you mentioned, I think I saw that she was a member of the track team, right?
Yeah, she played freshman or freshman. Played tennis her first year, and then she was a member of the track team after that. So I used to have fun with her because I told her for a while, I said, I think you hold more UVA records than anybody, because every time she ran a race for the first time, she set a record because it was first year of the track team. So like, you set a record, the 100, the 200, the 400, you're awesome. So,
that's pretty nice. Pretty nice claim to fame for sure. You played on I guess for Sonny Randall and Dick Bestwood.
Yeah, I did. And those were tumultuous times, which was unfortunate, really, Jerry, because we had some outstanding players on our team.
Yes.
We had a lot of guys. John Coleman went to NFL, Tom Glassick went to NFL, Dick Ambrose went to NFL. My first year we had Harrison Davis and Kent Merritt. We had a really talented folks. But the turmoil from coaching changes really impacted our ability as a team. Scott Gardner, a quarterback who had many of the records at UVA for a long time. So, I look at it, and it's one of the learnings I have in my own business is, the nature of group dynamics, of forming, storming, you got to go through before you can norm or perform again. When you're changing all the time, it's really difficult in college sports. It's difficult in business as well. So the importance of building a solid team and holding that together really matters.
Yeah, no question. I've interviewed Scott Gardner some in the past, and he held those passing records you mentioned for years, until the 90s, until guys like Sean Moore and Matt Blunden came along. So
he was a great athlete, quarterback, baseball player, big, strong, fast. We had a lot of really fun athletes on the team.
No question. What are your fondest memories of your playing days here?
Well, I love football. Just to be candid, I love playing football. It was just really fun. We had great experiences on the field, off the field, playing together. We had some great games. We had some really disappointing games. My second year had a really nice game against Navy, I remember, and I think rushed for about 100 yards. And I remember that game being the excitement of like, hey, I can play in college football. I think I'm going to be okay, play that. I remember spring games and summer and we had great times together. We have funny stories about us all going to practice together and complaining and laughing and picking on each other. We had a little group of us who remain friends today, like David Sloan and Joe Sroba and Bill Copeland and Joe Jenkins. Sometimes we'd all walk together, and our own different personalities would show up. David was very extroverted. He'd like to have a lot of conversations. Some of us like, hey, we're just walking to practice. Can we be quiet, and we had fun on it together working with that. It was really a special group of friends.
Not too long ago, you were honored by the Virginia Football Alumni Club as part of their Who's Making a Difference program. I'm actually helping publicize that with the club, and met some great players over the past that I had not met or have become reacquainted with. And what a great honor. They're gonna continue that at all the home games this season. But what did that mean to you and your wife, Robin, to be recognized like that?
Well, first, it was incredibly kind and generous from the university to do that. I will say that it was unexpected. But, in many ways, it'd been my dream to go to UVA and to experience the entire university, develop lifelong friends there, which I was able to do. In many ways, UVA made a tremendous mark on my life. And one of the things that we learned about at UVA was about leadership in our communities and what that looks like and how we exhibit that there. And so to have the university recognize that perhaps it's more than just being able to play football later in life, but how you give expression to what you learned there matters. And I really want to commend the university because, as you mentioned earlier, Jerry, there's a very small percentage of folks who play pro football. And if they do, they get injured or they don't stay there long, in real life. I mean, my fourth year, I broke my arm the fourth game, and that was it for me. But you would say, how do you give expression to who you are later in life matters, and how has football shaped us in a way that kind of enabled that to kind of be poured out?
You have a strong presence in Charlottesville with your car dealerships. I've lost count. You have so many here now.
Well, we bought a few more recently, so yes, we've grown that quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think you told me you're going to be here briefly to celebrate the opening of one of the new buildings, but you can mention that. Give yourself a plug if you'd like to.
Well, we're fortunate we've been able to acquire and grow. We have a great team up there of leadership in the community. So we built a bunch of new complexes. We have a lot of construction projects going on in Charlottesville right now. But I would say that for us, it's exciting to be back there. So all three of my children went to UVA. I met my wife at UVA. So we have deep connections in Charlottesville. My son worked at one of our dealerships there when he graduated school. And I had him go through everything there and go to different dealerships. And then he went back to graduate business school at Northwestern and is with me now. But so I had, when we were looking at acquiring these, I would say that there was a lot of encouragement from my family to say, let's make that investment. Let's do that.
Well, was it also important to you just to establish maybe a little bit more presence in Charlottesville just due to your connection?
Yeah, so we love Charlottesville. I've been involved there. I've been on the board of the McIntyre School of Business. I've been involved, chair of the board of the Institute for Advanced Studies and Culture, which is a center from UVA. So I have a long history of relationships, which I kept them with UVA. We'd like to remain closely involved. We have a number of friends in the city as well. And for us, it's always been like a second home. Whole family feels like that. So that's where we would see ourselves spending more time as time unfolds.
And not only do you have a strong business presence and presence with the university itself, but I know that you recently had the honor of speaking to this current Virginia football team before the season started. What was your message to them, and what was it like uniting with those kids?
Jerry, here's the crazy thing. I stood up there and looked out, and I said, I think this is 50 years to the day of my first practice at UVA.
Really?
So the first thing I thought was, these guys must look out there. That is an old guy right there. And I told him this is 50 years from the time I think I was with you. When I started, I was looking out saying, wow, all my time that's unfolded in 50 years and the incredible experiences I've had, and looking at these young men and thinking all their life that's about to come in front of them and the journey they're on. They've got a great coaching staff. They've got folks who both believe in them and care about them. They're going to challenge them. So it was a great experience. I talked to them about several things along the way that they asked me, what did you learn in football that's helped you later in life that was important to you? And I started by talking about what I described: the past shapes us, but the future needs to define us. The difference between shaped and the past define us. One of the mistakes athletes make is they get defined by their past. So nothing's worse than an old athlete who keeps talking about when they're 20 years old. But truthfully, last week doesn't matter. What matters is what I do this week in football. And so every week there's a new week. You look at it, and how do you, sometimes people say, whatever it is, a goldfish has a 10-second memory or something like that. The truth of the matter is, sports, you got to do that. But later in life, you want to do that because you don't want to get stuck in your past. You want to have a vision for your future of your life, what that looks like, and how you're going somewhere. So UVA, I did that particularly. We talked quite a bit about, given the tragedy of last year, how that's going to shape all their lives without question. But it can't be that which fundamentally defines who they are as people. And I said, my experience in life is that when you face tragedy, it either leaves you bitter or better. And those are choices we all make when we confront those. And so how does that team do that? And does that team have a vision for their future? So that defines who they become. I then talked about some more specific things like, we can never do anything alone. And I got out some pictures. I said, like, picture this, like you're running back and your tackle doesn't block the linebacker. I don't care if you're Derrick Henry, stuffed, nowhere. It just doesn't exist. The reality of it is football teaches you, particularly if you're in a skill position, like Tom Brady, all his receivers got hurt last year. Mm-hmm. Turns into above average quarterback, maybe the best quarterback of all time, who still is great, but it shows you, he missed his tight end.
Exactly.
That's just the reality of sports. It teaches you are linked together. Nobody outperforms the quality of their teammates around them. Then I said, another thing I said I really learned is, I say, there are no little people and there is no ordinary work. So I got at the kicker. I said, like, who's the smallest guy here? They got the kicker. I said, now give me the holder for extra point. The game's tied. No time left. You're kicking for the ACC championship. Who is the most important people right now? That's it. I said, all right, can they bench press more than anybody else? No, they all said no. Can they squat? No. Can they run faster? No. But in this matter, that's what matters. And any organization that's really structured like that understands there are no little people in the company. They all really matter. Everybody's work really matters along the way. Then I talked about that. One of the things I learned in sports is that, candidly, you can always get better. Mm-hmm. You can get better. And so, there's just not we have put limits on ourselves, but what we learn, you can get up one more time to run one more sprint and get off the ground. And you can see that with football players. My wife still talks about it all the time. She's like, I can tell you're sucking it up. That's leftover football days. You just get up one more time. You can do this again. Whether it's you're tired, that's all right. You can study one more hour. And, it's just something about the challenge of sports teaches you the capacity to go do that. And it's remarkable where, you do that, where you learn, we probably put more limits on ourselves than our actual capacity is most of the time in life. So those are some of the things we talked about.
Those are all great points, and I'm sure it made an impact on all those kids.
I love being with them. I love seeing them, and again, seeing out that age is saying they look fantastic. They're great athletes. They're in great shape, and and I looked out and said, I have a distant memory of what that looked like. We found my mom was cleaning out her attic. It's wonderful. My mom and dad are still alive at 94, 93. So they're cleaning out and stuff. And they found a picture of me when I was at UVA, in one of those pictures where you're running the ball, what they do for a photo op experience, And I showed that to my kids. They're like, wow, that was like a long time ago. Dark, bushy hair, weighed about 25 pounds more than I weigh now and everything. So, that's a distant memory.
But a great memory.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize this, but you were one of those guys who took your education seriously. Obviously, you weren't there just to play football. You were a lawn resident and a Rhodes Scholar nominee, and obviously that had a major influence on your life, just getting a great education from Virginia that you were able to carry on and succeed.
You know, Jerry, I'll tell you, at UVA, I had tremendous opportunity to, take classes under incredible professors, to be challenged, to meet other students. I was in the McIntyre School of Business, which, is pretty rigorous curriculum. I really enjoyed that. And then I was fortunate, I went to see professors, and I had two professors in particular who I said, I'd like to do an independent study on you, underneath you, in areas that I've never studied, but I'm willing to take the risk. I did one on classical music with Dr. Mead, and a particular whole subject for the summer I wanted to learn about. And he was great and really helped me. And I learned a lot in that specific area. And one of the things he made me do, he said, I still remember this. It was the seminar was on Gustav Mahler, who's a musician, Austrian. And I wanted to learn about his music at a particular time. And so he said, okay, you have to listen to an hour every night. You have to read all these books. You have to keep a journal of what you're hearing, and you have to learn how to play all the scales on the piano so you can hear it properly. I said, Dr. Mead, I don't know how to play the piano. He said, you'll learn. And wow. So he said, he took me down and to the room they have at Cabot Hall where they have pianos, gave me a little key and said, you can go there and practice and learn. So I know how to start. He said, I'm going to teach you. So he said, I'm going to teach you how to use your right hand and then your left hand, and you'll learn to play the scales. So I got really proud. I said, look, I can do my right hand. I said, now we're going to do your left hand. Now you're going to go up with your right, up with your left, down with your left, down with your right. Then you're going to reverse them backwards, and I'm doing this all every night, practicing. So years pass, and Dr. Mead turns 90, and I go back for a birthday party at his house. And there was his piano. I said, like 40 years had passed, I think about. I said, Dr. Mead, look, I can still do it. Now it's a little shaky, but I can still do it. All those things you taught me. So, I just had these wonderful professors invest their life in me. I had a professor at the Darden School. I did these case studies with him, independent studies on leadership and things I'd learned from coaches over the years. I went to see him. His name was Alex Horniman, and he said, let's do this together. And that was, a big help. And then I just I had student friends from every walk of life, Jerry, that were kind to me along the way. And I just developed wonderful friendships from wide spectrum at UVA. And I still commend that for UVA.
And that's, that's getting the full experience from a university is not just being narrowly minded and fixating on the sport you're playing or whatever activity you're in.
I was an honor advisor for the honor committee. Helped set up the media board for the university when I was an undergraduate. So, and it all started with actually Gene Corrigan. I'm coming off the field in the spring of my first year, and he said, "Come over here." And I'm like, "Hey, the athletic director, I'm that's something wrong. I don't know about, And he said, "I'd like you to get involved with student government." And I said, well, football coach think that's okay? And he said, football coach works for me. I think it'll be fine. And so he said, go do this. You can do this. He said, I think you can play football and do these other things and manage all this in your life. And I want to encourage you to go do that. And so he became Gene Corrigan became a mentor for me and a friend. And until he passed away, we stayed in touch. And it was just another one of those wonderful gifts of relationships where he would challenge me to do more and kind of try to expand myself. And so I was really grateful for that.
I truly loved Gene Corrigan, everything about the man. And we used to have a luncheon before COVID started it started at a little place called Lord Hardwick's on 29. It's no longer there. And then when they closed, we moved out to Glenmore where Gene lived, to the one of the restaurants in the clubhouse. And Joe Geek would put it together every 6 weeks of a bunch of guys from UVA that have made a difference over the years, and some other people like Bill Millsaps and myself were there. And Gene was, I often sat beside Gene and just relished in hearing the stories that he would tell.
Great stories, aren't there? Just great stories.
Yeah, I miss that so much, but what an incredible man he was.
And he loved people. He just loved being with people. He loved the university. He loved UVA.
Oh, yeah, no question.
I saw him when his last time when he was ACC commissioner at an ACC tourney game, and I'd stayed to the end, and really there was nobody there left, and I saw him walking around the Greensboro Coliseum, and you could tell he just wanted to relish one last moment because he just loved college sports.
Yes, he truly did. And college sports, I think, is better for having a guy like him.
Well, look at all the ADs he kind of brought forth. Johnny Swafford, Ted Turner, all these guys came out of his kind of tree along the way.
That's right. That's right. And so many coaches too that he influenced over the years. Talking about your time at UVA, a little birdie told me this. I assume it's a true story, but when Queen Elizabeth visited Charlottesville back in the 70s, I was told that she and her son, who is now the King of England, visited the lawn and happened to end up at your room on the lawn, and it's you showed us a little bit. Is that a true story?
Well, it's almost true. It was actually Queen Elizabeth and her husband, Prince Philip.
Oh, okay, Prince Philip.
And that for whatever reason, university, Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip wanted to have two students they met and have a conversation with. And so they were speaking down at Capitol Hall, looking up the lawn. They came walking up the lawn, and they came into the lawn room. And there were in the room was President Hereford and a woman, undergraduate, and myself, and then Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth. So it was really a remarkable moment in time where we stayed for quite a while. I'll tell you some funny stories that came out of that. But one of the things that we had to go to charm school effectively. We had to learn to speak to royalty, like Your Majesty, Your Royal Highness. You don't look at her. She looks at you. You don't touch her ever. He puts his hand out. You kind of touch it. Like you don't shake their hand. That's not what you do. And actually, I think The Crown, the TV show The Crown, captured quite well both the personalities that I experienced and also the way you engage them. They showed Tony Blair kind of managing all that. Mm-hmm. So when we were in there, he asked the moment the door closed, the kind of personality that you see on the TV show The Crown was Prince Philip's. He became funny and a cut up and asked questions and said things that, the Queen actually hushed him up one time and told him to quit doing that stuff. It was really hilarious. But she was always the Queen. She was the Queen. He was different. But the moment the door opened again to go out, he was Prince Philip. He understood his role. She was always the Queen. He understood, I got to play, I am this role when I'm in public because of what I represent. It was a really remarkable experience for me to understand. For Queen Elizabeth, the cost for her was who she was became the Queen in life. He managed somewhat to have a private self and a public self that he could kind of balance a little bit along the way. And that, it was a big consequence. And we've seen all that work out in the next generation where they struggle, right? How they manage all that along the way. But for, a 20-year-old kid who was sitting in the room with Prince Philip and Queen Elizabeth, and, pretty amazing time along the way. And of course, he said to me, when you leave, hey, let me show you sometime around our home. Wow. If you come to England. And of course, my kids for years, Dad, what is wrong with you? You didn't take him up on that? I said, I don't think he really meant it, guys. But he was very kind.
What an incredible experience.
It was.
My goodness. How many people ever get to do something like that? That's amazing. Just amazing.
Well, it's a gift from the university to me. I mean, it was, and they were kind to select me to do that.
You built, Don, went back home to Winston-Salem and essentially built a business empire.
Well, don't use the word empire.
Okay.
It could crumble any day. I mean, the reality. But we've worked hard and had a lot of great people. Jerry worked with me over the years, of great folks that have been with me for a long time since we had dark hair, as I mentioned, and we were a lot younger.
Is there a key to your success? What kind of advice would you give to aspiring businessmen, businesswomen who would love to be in a similar seat someday.
Well, I would say that I really committed myself to people, and for what we kind of framed our company. We said, what's it mean to be a purpose-driven, people-centric, community-engaged company? What would that look like? And so when we define purpose in terms of how we engage our customers and our employee base to work together, what that looks like, and so we were very clear about what we wanted to do, and we kind of laid out these foundational commitments I made at a really young age, and said, what would it mean to have what we call a covenant of trust with our customers, that we'd be a place they could always trust and believe in? What would it be like to have a community organized around a common purpose as a workplace, and all the things we could do? And then how would we be committed to the common good of our cities? So that's how we built our whole company, around those three basic fundamental commitments. And we reorganized how we did business. We don't do business the normal way, car dealerships. We don't negotiate on prices. We put our best price. We do all these kind of promises we do that are different from typical dealerships, because we thought that's what trust looks like. In a workplace, we thought about how do we invest in our people's lives long-term and build a community. So we do unusual things. We pay for the college education of all of our employees' children.
Wow.
2,000 employees. So we really make a big investment in their lives long-term. We have nurses on staff full-time for our employees. We have a family counseling center for our employees. So if they have any personal issues, they have access to that. We're not a public company. I'd rather reinvest in our people and really invest in their lifetime. If our employees volunteer in their communities, we pay them their salary while they're volunteering, because we consider that work. That's the same work. Go out in the community and go do that. So it's a different way of thinking about business and how we engage the work we do. And we try to think about, if we were building a long-term sustainable business that added value in the communities we're in, how would we do that? And so I was young and started that really, with that long view in mind. And I'm now really fortunate that my son, who's 38 this year, will be, taking my position someday, and he's more than qualified to take it and continue to grow it and expand it with that deep kind of commitment still in place.
Well, obviously that's a business model that's works and has been extremely successful, and I think people would admire the way you've done that.
Well, one of the most wonderful things is we've been able to think about our communities. If you think about dealerships, we're local businesses. We're embedded in our communities. So we thought about how do we reinvest in our communities? So we have a foundation, and we allocate pretty strong amount of earnings back into our communities. When we think that, education matters in communities, social services matter in communities. And so we're large participants in that, because as our communities thrive, we thrive, and we want to be a place that reinvest in our communities, just doesn't consume the cultural capital of our communities. And so we're fortunate to be in a lot of great cities, and I spend a fair amount of time in different cities and know the personalities of them. We like mid-sized cities. That way, just like Charlottesville, there's relationships. You can know each other, as opposed to going to Atlanta, where you're just kind of lost in the big city.
Right. I had lunch with one of your employees not long ago, and I said, for people in Charlottesville who haven't had the pleasure of meeting Don Flow, they just see Flow Automotive sign. Tell me something about him that people may not know or would like to know. And he said, the man is driven. He's incredibly driven, and that he's always learning. He's always trying to better himself, and he listens to people. And I can think of much better compliments than that from somebody that works for you.
Well, that's really kind to say. Jerry, one of the things that I tried to do is, it's kind of a discipline in my life. I think in 4 categories, and people who work with me are used to hearing this. And I look at it on a weekly, monthly basis, kind of like, so what do we want to preserve? What have we been doing with excellence we want to keep doing? Just like what you've been doing. How do I keep that up? And we know that if we don't keep at it, it will deteriorate over time, right? So you got to keep at it. What am I doing that I need to do better? Where do I need to improve? Thirdly, what do I need to do new that I haven't been doing that I need to try? We'll call that innovate. And then what do I need to eliminate? What I've been doing that really doesn't add value anymore, I shouldn't be doing it. So we call that preserve, improve, innovate, eliminate. And the elimination, I describe it like this. When Rob and I first got married, we got a Christmas tree, and all we had was like a little star at the top. That was all that's on the tree. Like 45 years later, you can't even see that tree anymore. It's got so much stuff on it, lifetime stuff, right? So that's how much of us work about our lives. We need to say, do we need to take some things off so we can be freed up to do new things? Just like you doing a podcast. I bet there was a time in your life you didn't think you'd do a podcast.
Absolutely not.
That I need to try something new, right? I need to go try that. So that discipline of asking ourselves all the time. And so the people who work around me are used to hearing that all the time. We talk about the difference between, for instance, running out of gas in a car, running out of fuel in a plane. There's like a big difference. And I tell them, look, this side of heaven, no one's going to be perfect. So we're going to run out of gas in cars. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to learn from those, we're going to improve from those all the time. Now, running out of fuel in a plane, I want to be involved because that's a pretty big deal. Yes. But the rest of that stuff is just normal life. That's where you learn, you grow, you keep getting better all the time, and you try and do things. So that's how we try to, that's our culture along the way. And yes, we talk about, we want to be a place that's both high caring and high challenge. So we want to be both. Just like I learned in football, right? Mm-hmm. You got to care about your teammates, but you got to try all the time. You know, you can't have a time where you just sit it out. When you sit it out in sports, you get on the bench. So, you know, and that's what people are used to me. And I'm sure that whoever that person was, they're used to that experience around me too.
Yeah, I have found and have shared this with a lot of people over the years that sports teaches you so many great life lessons that, like you just mentioned, that helps you succeed in whatever field you choose, whatever path you go down. So,
Brent, you mentioned a memory. Here's one right now where you got to learn from change. So we're playing Maryland. I still remember this. Randy White. Do you remember that name? The three-time All-American. You know, fantastic. Manster, that's right. So I'm a tailback. We're running at him. I'm like, Coach, this is not working. Can we go the other way? He's unblockable. I watched him knock our guy down. Let's just, you know, let's learn from this and go the other way.
You learn that lesson in a real hurry.
Yeah, really quickly when you're running back.
Yeah,
I got hit so hard. My Robin, I'm dating her. She comes out of the football locker room out by, you know, what was called Scott Field where we played then, everything, you know. And I've got a neck brace on. I like, she said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Oh man, I can't move my neck. It's killing me." It's homecoming. We didn't do much that night at homecoming.
I hope you haven't run into Randy White since then.
No.
He would probably like that story though.
Yeah.
Yeah, no question. I hope a lot of young people are listening to this and pick up some great advice from Don and some life lessons as well. And what an incredible life story, Don. I mean, somebody should write a book about you, man. I tell you.
We've got enough about that. Thanks, Jerry.
But
you look at your life story, look at all the stories and people and relationships you've known at UVA, and you've seen all these athletes unfold in every sport along the way. It's pretty remarkable. If you go back and look at, you know, UVA's athletes and how we've emerged. You know, when I first went there, it was the first generation of African-American athletes there.
Right.
You know, and I'd come from a school that was fully integrated. So it was, you know, for me, that was a normal experience for kids. Everybody's going through that in the 70s. You see how the university's unfolded now to be a much more diverse place. And it's just a great experience. We have a former player, Tyrone Lewis, who works for us, who leads up our training and development for all of our company. And Ty, I've known Ty since he was 15 years old.
Wow.
So he came to work for me washing cars when he was in high school and doing work along the way, and ended up going to UVA and doing great at UVA. And I played pro football for a little while, played pro baseball for a little while, and came back to work with us and has a great job with us and does a fantastic job. And, you know, we talk all the time about look at all the players, how their lives have unfolded, look at the network of relationships there. And I love that UVA is now beginning to really work under Coach Elliott to say, how do we bring back alumni to engage with players and kind of be with them? You know, previously under NCAA, there's so many complications. I couldn't take a person out to breakfast really. So, now there's more openness to say, how could we engage in mentor relationships and give younger folks, kind of a picture about what they could do with their lives.
Yeah, you're right. And you're right about my career too. I've been truly blessed to have been around all the great coaches and players and other folks at UVA since I got here in 1982, and even outside of UVA, all around the ACC and
right
sports and some pro sports.
I mean, you've been there in terms of so many iconic names. Think about Valvano, Dean Smith. I mean, the amount of coaches and folks and different personalities that have been around the ACC, it's really remarkable.
It really
That's
is.
why I was so pleased to see us work like crazy in the last couple of weeks to pull together a plan to keep the ACC moving forward as a conference. I mean, I know that folks are like, wow, Stanford, Cal, how's all that work together? Well, the ACC needed to put something in place to ensure that it's got a runway for going forward. And this will certainly give us the time. And then, candidly, nobody knows exactly what's going to happen the next 10 years, right? We certainly learned, but we know that we at least have the building blocks in place to be able to really be in charge of our own destiny, as opposed to being whipped around and knocked around by not having a rudder that can guide us.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was a strong move by the ACC, something that they needed to do, and it took some courage to make that step. And but I think it helps secure the future and makes the conference more stable, and perhaps and some other people happy.
Right. And President Ryan played a leadership role in all of this, a really important leadership role in sustaining this, bringing everybody together. Everybody had different points of view, different interests along the way. And I can imagine what it's like to shepherd university presidents and chancellors to a common point of view. But he did a great job with that and really made a difference.
That was a challenge in itself. No question about it.
Yep.
Trying to get 15 people to agree on anything is a challenge, but particularly something of that major consequence, that's for sure. But wow, it's been so great spending some time with you this afternoon, Don. An invaluable story, I think, for any of our listeners out there, or those who watch us on YouTube for the video portion of the show. And just what a great story, and what an inspiration, I think, to the young athletes of Virginia, because they look at you and they say, well, I can follow his footsteps and try to be successful in life. I think it's just an incredible story.
Well, I promise you they can. I mean, that is the wonderful thing. Any athlete at UVA has worked hard to go through UVA. They've applied themselves along the way. They've built a network of relationships that really matter, and they can take all those lessons learned, and those opportunities will be there for them. And stay connected to the UVA network of friends, and things will unfold for them. And so I just am so grateful for my relationship to UVA, grateful for all the people that poured their lives into my life. In many ways, I am a product of the relationships that helped shape me, Jerry, there. And I see it worked out all the time.
Well, it's been a great path and a great story, and thank you for sharing it with us. I know it's going to inspire a lot of people watching this or listening to this, and hopefully we'll see you sometime not too far down the road.
Yeah, look forward to doing that.
I know
Thanks so much.
Thank you. I know you've got other stuff on your agenda today, so again, thanks for taking the time. We appreciate it, and best wishes. We'll see you soon.
My privilege. Thanks so much, Jerry. Good to be with you today.
Thank you.